Yeah, Hollywood's a bit of a wild town. Not gonna lie. Wonder Man. I wasn't sure I was gonna jump on this, but I actually am feeling like I might almost be kind of close to being on schedule, so I did allow myself to binge through this. And, oh boy. So this is a case of, I think this is good. I absolutely appreciate it existing at all, but it's also not really for me for some pretty specific reasons. But I do think this is a positive thing, both in and of itself and for the MCU overall. I'll start with that stuff, and then I'll explain why it's not quite for me, despite the fact that overall I think it's very good. So, for the sake of the MCU, a far more character-focused, pared-down story like this, I think is just a healthy thing for them to do. Like, you know, not every single show or whatnot necessarily resulted in, massive universe-ending stakes, but I did complain a few years ago about how every frickin' show tied to the MCU ended in a big boss fight. Now, some of that ended up not being true for some of the more recent stuff. Like, I think it's a stretch to say that Agatha All Along ended in a big boss fight, though I had other issues with that show. But for a long time it was the case, including shows where thematically it didn't make sense for it to end in a big boss fight. Shows like Moon Knight and WandaVision and probably some others that I'm just not thinking of at the moment because a lot of this stuff is mushed together in my brain. But to see something that not only doesn't end in a big fight, but realizes like that's just not what it's doing at all, and it's much more about people existing in a universe like this than it is about a standard superhero story. And it's very laser focused in on that, because I think what I've come to expect from a lot of Marvel output is for it to seem like it's going to be kind of a different angle, but then by the end it's the same standard nonsense as always. And this isn't. Which is good. So I think for the sake of just the MCU and their approach to it, because like this is the kind of thing they should have been making, honestly, since they started doing series on Disney Plus. This is a far better use of their time than stuff like Falcon and the Winter Soldier or, almost anything would be a better use of their time than Secret Invasion. But, that kind of stuff where it feels like they're trying to condense what maybe if you're going to do it at all, should be a movie, and condense it down to TV. And genuinely embrace the TV format and do something that has little touches of the universe and little touches of superheroing, but is much more just TV scaled. Honestly, they should have been doing stuff like this from the beginning. I'm not going to say this is the only thing that they should have been doing, but stuff like this should have existed a lot sooner than it did. So I think it's good for the MCU overall. As an individual piece, I also think it's pretty solid. So, like, obviously, Ben Kingsley as Trevor is great. He's been great every time. He's still great in this. And he is allowed to have some emotional depth in this. He's not just a comic relief character, though he's worked very well as a comic relief character, particularly in Shang-Chi. But this is a really good use of him. And also, I really like Yahya Abdul-Mateen, the second. I almost forgot the second as part of his name. I think he's a fantastic actor anyways. I first really fell in love with him when I saw the Watchmen series. He was so good in that. He's very good in this too. And he's very good at bringing a lot of depth just through his presence. The guy's got incredible screen presence. And for to see it funneled into a character as, at times at least, innocuous as this one is really interesting. And I think it's a solid use of him, because I think if you'd played into, him trying to just get by as a normal guy, if you played into that too much with the casting, he could have been boring, but he's not. So all that being said, why did I say it's kind of not really for me? Well, a couple of reasons. First is, if you have been around my channel for a bit, then I've already talked about how I have a very strong distaste and gut level, just bad reaction to cringe, be it cringe comedy or just cringe in general. And I would argue this kind of has both. Not every cringe moment is played for laughs. But with Simon, that's the lead character in this, with Simon, so much of his screen time is taken up in, establishing the ways in which he kind of sabotages his own career and is bad at connecting with people, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not. And then the ways he tries to come across as a more normal guy, which is not very easy for him to do. And it all kind of leans into cringe. Now, the first 10 minutes is the worst of it. The first 10 minutes were really hard. Now, I'm not going to say that they're inaccurate, because that's leaning much more into the idea of some guy who is a talented actor but can't get out of his own way. Like the way he kind of sabotages his own career by kind of taking things over and overanalyzing what is a day player role on a TV show. Here's a quick story. Someone I knew who went to college for theater and one time was involved in a theater production. Someone who we mutually know kind of got in their own head for a bit part in a play and was eating up way more rehearsal time than was justified by how important this character was in the show. Which is that's the thing that Simon does in this. He's asking all these questions, and I'm like, look, it's great that you want to delve this much into your character. That's not an invalid thing to do. But the instant you start eating up the time of everyone else to do it, you become a problem. And I just remember being told about this story where this person who we both knew did actually ask that classic actor question, well, what's my motivation? And the director was so fed up, they told this person, your motivation is to say your line and then get off stage without distracting from the main characters. So, I feel like that's kind of what somebody needs to, Simon needs that tattooed on the inside of his eyelids. So, it's not an inaccurate thing. It is not exaggerating stuff so much into the realm of absurdity for cringe, which sometimes feels like it happens with some cringe comedy. It's that is so far beyond anything reasonable just so you could make it extra cringe. This kind of stuff does happen, but in a way that almost kind of made it worse, because I recognize some of this nonsense, and that just kind of makes it more painful to see. But again, that doesn't make it bad. Cringe comedy in and of itself is not a just de facto bad thing as a product. It's bad for me as a viewer, and while those first 10 minutes were the worst of it, it is sprinkled throughout. There were a couple of points later on as well where it was so bad I did that thing that I have to do where I muted it and read the subtitles, because listening to it and having to see their faces and all that together, I'm like, I can't. So that happened at a few points, including within the first 10 minutes. So yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is, while this, for the most part, does a pretty good job at balancing, sort of commentary and satire, I'm not sure it goes so far as to call it satire, but examination of Hollywood, the Hollywood system, and trying to be a working actor, it does okay when it's dealing with the broad strokes, the process of, auditions and callbacks and, psyching yourself out for that, and just trying to find the ways to make that kind of life work. That all works pretty well, but then there are a handful of moments where they have actual Hollywood actors playing themselves, and there's even a couple specific things that, and I can't think of them now, but there were a couple specific moments that felt very much Marvel trying to point and laugh at itself. And first of all, to the extent that you're going to get away with that, you did that better in the She-Hulk, finale already. But beyond that, I'm just kind of it's one thing when there's this general sort of view of actors as either self-important or as kind of oblivious to the fact that they're kind of dicks or, anything like that. The instant you put an actor in there playing themselves, playing a parody version of themselves, you kind of lose me, to be honest, because it has that, oh, see, I can laugh at myself. I'm one of the cool ones kind of energy that is the same reason why I didn't like the corporate jokes in the Barbie movie. Because I knew that as much as other people were like, oh, it's so subversive, they make fun of the Hasbro executives. I'm like, the Hasbro executives signed off on that. Like, they know full well that they want to be the butt of the joke because they think it humanizes them and makes them seem, more normal when, like, they're not. Not that I'm, like, accusing the actors who are in this playing themselves of being as damaging as corporate executives. But it's got that same overall energy to it that, like, see? We have fun here, right? I'm like, dude, just stop. Stop. It's try hard. And I mean that like for the show. I'm not even necessarily going to blame these actors. Like, it's fine. I understand like wanting to play a parody version of yourself. I could see that being kind of entertaining. I suppose in some ways I've technically done that for like cameo appearances on other people's channels intermittently. But, as an extended focus, I'm just kind of like, yeah, no, I get it. Move on, please. And there are a handful of moments that kind of have that energy, even when it's not, actors playing themselves. And that's kind of the other thing that distances me from this a little bit. Again, it's not like I had a bad time watching it, but I was finding myself going, I can see the value in this more than I am personally enjoying it. So that's kind of where it ends up landing for me, ultimately. As far as like an actual narrative and a story of how to tackle Wonder Man, I think it's a pretty good way to go about it, at least to the extent that I know Wonder Man. I only know Wonder Man a little bit from the comics. That said, what they did with Doorman was pretty neat, although a chunk of that fed into some of the parodying of the business and the people in it stuff that made me a little bit tired of it. But the overall concept of how the character of Doorman, how he's introduced, why he's relevant to what's going on now, yeah, that was pretty solid. It's pretty well thought out. I think this is a good piece of work. I think this is a well-planned, well-executed piece of work that just makes a handful of choices that aren't for me, not in a you made a bad narrative choice way, but in a this is an area of entertainment that I just don't particularly enjoy. And other people will likely enjoy it more than me, which is great. I hope it finds that audience. But yeah, that's kind of it for me. It's solid. I would never rewatch it personally. Wonder Man! You see this one? What are your thoughts on it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. That'll help. Don't worry too much about it, though. Take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break.
And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Subin Lutfulla, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Ulrich, Twylord, Tracy Scrabbit, Palba Rabajoggle, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and thanking some random folks from the lower tiers of my Patreon: Puck, Lady Sammy, and Eva Bright. Don't worry, the rats are fine. Just thought we'd kick the year off with Archie. What you think, bud? He's skeptical.